You start admitting people there, Brendan, actually.
I'm the hand.
I have a strange hand here, my friend here, Brendan, helping me out.
Okay. A third hand.
The Beast with 5 fingers, if you remember that movie.
I think I'm okay today, because normally you can see my hand every now appearing and letting people in.
Yes, this disembodied hand.
Yeah. Hello. It'd be really strange, eh? Okay, admitting all of you. Ready, go. So probably better say hello to everybody.
Okay, so people coming in now, that's great. Okay, we have about 34 people there now. So, Pam Gregory, I'm going to welcome you as we get people, we let people keep rolling in. We're delighted to have you here at Positive Nights. This is an event we do for the magazine. We normally do live events, but we're on Zoom, and it's great because we can connect with people like you from anywhere in the world, and people can watch us anywhere in the world. So that's amazing. Pam, your background is second to none in astrology. You've been doing it for a lifetime, it looks like.
Several, I think.
Yeah, you're incredibly well respected in astrology circles. Your profile is amazing on YouTube. And I think most people actually, during the whole virus thing, when we were locked down, lots of my peers and colleagues were telling me they were checking in with your astrology, and it was giving them great comfort going through these very, very strange times. And I started to tune in then, and I saw some of your work, and I just thought the way you describe the transits, it's very accessible, and your manner it's just very easy to relate to. And I also, as I said earlier, love your events with or your interviews with Bracket. So delighted to have you here tonight, Pam Gregory. It's a real pleasure, and we're going to delve into some really cool subjects. So first off, you're very, very welcome for joining.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And I'm going to welcome everybody now. You're there. What we're going to do is I'm going to chat to Pam for about 40 minutes, and then we're going to hand over to you guys. And I'm going to keep you muted just because it's much easier to run. But you can type your questions in to the chat bar, and I'll relay them to Pam. So I will have a chat for 45 minutes and then hand over to you your questions for about half an hour, probably something like that. So how I like to always begin these events is just a little tuning in. So I'm going to invite you all to just close your eyes. Sorry we started a little bit late, but just close your eyes and drop into your heart center. And really feel your body kind of dropping, just the vibration of your body just completely dropping into your heart center. So we're letting go of thinking, and we're moving into feeling. So thoughts, judgments, anything that's gone on in your day today, just let it drift on by. And now you're moving into this new language of feeling. No opinions, no judgments, just feeling. And check in now with how you're feeling today, in this moment. I'm going to invite you all to remain in this space as we engage in this event tonight. So to come from a place of feeling, to simply listen to the evening, take what resonates and let go of the rest. So if your mind starts to have little chats about things, just let it go and stay in your heart center, and whatever resonates, take that away. And now we'll just take a couple of breaths together into our heart center. And now as you open your eyes, just put your hand on your heart center, feel that connection. As you open your eyes, feel your feet on the floor, nice and grounded, centered. And as I say, engaging from the heart. And open your eyes when you're ready. And to our audience, you're all very welcome. Delighted to have you here tonight. We're going to really get into some nice subjects and hopefully have an uplifting evening. That's the intention. And Pam, as I said, you're very welcome. And we're going to start right there. Okay, so how astrology came into your life, we'd really like to know that. What was I can only imagine there's a big destiny moment here. There must have been.
Yeah, it was huge, actually. After university, I'd emigrated to Toronto, and quite quickly I joined a yoga class there. And one of the girls at the yoga class said to me, that chap over there, who bizarrely, his name was Asta, and of course in Latin, astra means star, so it's really weird. Anyway, she said he's an astrologer. So I went up to him at the end of the class and I said, look, I know nothing about this, but I'd love you to do my chart. And I went to see him, and I remember it just like it was yesterday. I went to see him in his tiny flat in Toronto, and I spent 7 hours with him, and he just blew me away. He took me back through my life and gave me dates and ages of events and qualities of things that had happened. And, you know, that time with him just kind of cracked open the world for me to reveal this whole world of meaning, this dimension of meaning I'd been completely unaware of up to that point. And I haven't stopped since, actually. That was absolutely pivotal. So not only did I start yoga that week for the first time, I started my astrological studies, which I haven't stopped since. And indeed, I learn something new every day. I will never stop learning. That's one of the wonderful things about it.
And was his reading particularly, was it kind of quite life-changing what came out in the reading for you? Or
it was. He talked a lot about my relationship with my parents and all that had gone on there, and my work relationships, my romantic relationships, all of that. But it was interesting because in those days, I mean, we're talking several centuries ago here, in the course of several house moves, I lost the tape. And eventually I decided to leave Canada and come back to England. And so I was packing up all my belongings into boxes, ready to sort of leave the next day. And he said, the 4th of September, 1979 will be a major turning point in your life. And 2 months later will be one of the major highs of your life. Well, that day was the 4th of September, 1979. I was leaving Canada forever. And 2 months later, I was sitting at 19,000 feet in the Himalayas. So that was a very literal high. So I thought, you know, there's something to this. Okay. I've really got to learn this stuff. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. And then you went on a path then. And who was your main teacher that sticks out in your life? Who was your main mentor that you remember? And what was the most powerful thing you learned at that particular time?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many things I learned. You know, you just keep blowing fuses with astrology, actually, because there's so many kind of wow and aha moments. It just goes on and on and on, and probably will till I'm 90. But I was self-taught in Canada, and then when I got back to England, I enrolled at the Faculty of Astrological Studies in London, and they are very well respected. They're a very kind of traditional body, and I was working very full-time in London, but I studied with them for 8 years to get my diploma. And I remember you couldn't even use a calculator in their exams. You had to use logarithms. I mean, it really drilled into your brain what you were doing. And then after that, I went on to do a master's course with Noel Till, who very sadly, in his 80s, died last Christmas. But he was a genius. He was, well, apart from the fact he was 6'11", I mean, he was a gigantic man, but he was a gigantic brain. He was absolute genius level in astrology, and he resurrected a lot of old Babylonian techniques with astrology. And that really made me a competent astrologer, doing that master's course. And I was very aware of how old he was, so I crammed it into 16 months. I mean, some people take years to do it, but I didn't know how long he had, so I really worked at it, and I adored it. I was really sad when, you know, got to the end of the course and did well, but God, I just wanted to keep going forever with it. And I do still learn every day, as I say, but he was gigantic in every sense in my learning. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. So how it came into your life, and now where we want to go really is how you see the stars and the planets in terms of it's kind of like is it a blueprint? I was asking you this earlier. Is it a blueprint for Earth? Is it a blueprint for the galaxy? Is it a blueprint for the individual? How do you see the stars and the planets?
It's very much a blueprint for the individual, as I see it, because you have to have the exact time of birth, and we'll get into time in a moment, I'm sure, but the exact time is crucial because it sets up the clock face of the entire birth chart. And if somebody is, say, 8 minutes wrong in giving me their birth time, I can be 2 to 3 years wrong in what I'm anticipating for them going forward. So they might think, well, you know, I saw that astrologer woman and she told me all this was going to happen and it hasn't happened. Well, it's going to happen about 2 to 3, you know, because of that error. So what I now always do is with every client, even if they feel their birth time is definite, I will go back, depending on their age, I might go back and ask 30 or 35 questions about dates, ages in their past. I'll describe the quality of the experience I'm expecting from that particular aspect, and I will wait to hear what comes back. And if they say, yep, that happened, but they all happened 6 months later, then I know that person is born just a couple of minutes later, and I can rectify the chart, and then everything runs like clockwork. And if you have confidence going backwards, you should have confidence going forwards. So to answer the part of your question, the reason I don't think there may well be, but I don't know at a chart for the Earth, is we don't know the precise birth time of the Earth to the, I think it's 13 million years ago. So I haven't got ephemerides for that, nor do I have an exact moment. So the exact moment is crucial, and that's why astrologers, you know, bang on so precisely about it, because it sets up the exact clock face, but it also gives you the angles of the chart, which are like crosswise in a compass, and they are the most sensitive thing in the entire chart. If you're looking at when big life change happens, really you look to those angles, and those angles move by roughly 1 degree every 4 minutes on the clock. So that's why you've got to get the time right. Really important.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few astrologers, and what I'm interested, they say that when you look at a chart, there's a kind of an intimate feeling. Do you get that? Do you get a very intuitive sense, or do you get are you more, what way do you work? Are you quite academic in how you work, or do you get a real feeling and intuitive, like does it come to life when you look at it in a sense, the chart?
Yeah, good question. I think for the first many years actually, of my study with astrology, it was very academic and very analytical, because that's the kind of mind I have. You know, I have to be like a rat up a drain pipe, I have to be analysing. But as the time has gone on, particularly since doing the master's course with Noel Till, which I finished, 15 years ago or so, I almost now see it like a piece of music. I can hear the music play, because really and I think this will be discovered ultimately, every planet and every piece of geometry is actually a pitch. It's music. You know, Pythagoras talked about the harmony of the spheres. And if you go onto the internet and just do a search on, you know, the music of the planets, it's actually been recorded. You get some amazing sounds now, whether that's caused by the spinning of those planets or the orbit or whatever. There's a combination of the resonance from the planet and the resonance from the geometry that planet is making to other planets. And that gives you a kind of pitch, and that's what I hear now as it's coming out of the printer, the birth chart. I can kind of feel into it like music, much, much more intuitively. Yeah, so that was, great question.
I'm so glad I asked you that, because that just came in from nowhere. So I'm really glad you asked that, or I asked you that. That's a really good answer. Music, brilliant. Now we're going to move on to time and how you feel. It's funny, we had an event here once and we had a guy who was big into crop circles. And he said that he had engaged with some higher consciousness, whether it be extraterrestrial, but it showed him time. And instead of it just showed him time coming like a funnel in through you. It was a beautiful moment in the event where he stood up and he just simply flipped it. You know, he was like, it's linear, it's past, present, future. And he went, no, it's like that. It's just a funnel coming right through. And we allude to someone like Eckhart Tolle, the power of now. And in these particular times, that ability to draw all your energy and bring it into the present moment. Can you talk to us a bit about time within the framework of astrology and what it means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, because it takes me back to when I was 7 years old, actually. And anybody who knows their astrology will know at the age of 7, everybody has their first Saturn square, transiting Saturn 90 degrees square to natal Saturn. Saturn is in myth, chronologies, Chronos, Lord of Time. So it's very connected to linear time. And I remember at the age of 7, I got a book out of the library on time. And I could just feel my brain expanding with all this philosophy of time. And I never took the book back to the library. I read it and read it and read it until it had fallen apart. And of course, then I knew nothing about astrology, but I was just fascinated by the concept of time. Because as I've just said, when you're working with a birth chart, you've got to have the exact right time. And I've thought about this very deeply, because if, as an astrologer, I'm looking at transits, which again are dealing with linear time, you know, the orbits of the planets, that is again very much 3D linear time. But there are other techniques I use which are much more organic, which aren't really dependent on time, which are about the unfolding of that soul's development as they move through their life. So they're much more organic, much less pinned down by time. And what I believe, it's so interesting what you've said about the chat with crop circles, because what I believe is, for this 3D incarnation, we were born into linear time. Now, actually, our soul is so much more than that. And we know that really there is no space and time. But as we incarnated it initially into this 3D reality, it had to be pinned down in time. And one of the huge lessons I think we all have to learn in this lifetime is kind of how to escape time. Because if we're thinking about the past, we're often worrying or fretting. Certainly if we're thinking about the future at the moment, we're often fretting or worrying. We're not in a great place. So being able to drop into the ever-present now, where actually there's no time, I think is one of the antidotes to a lot of the stuff we're seeing in the world right now. And every single one of us as a human being has to learn to grow, if you like, from that 3D linear time into something greater. Does that make sense?
It makes great sense. It's the word I'm hearing is multidimensional, that we actually can switch within. And it's brilliant the way you described it as we're born into it. So it's like it's just like a little vibe we're kind of playing in at the moment, you know, but we're not trapped in it the way we would have perceived that years ago. We can actually transcend it. Yeah. So that's beautiful. And you do that when you bring yourself, as we said, into the present moment. This time will fly, as you know. So we're doing our best to stay in the present moment, but it will fly. So the next question is probably going to take us a little bit of time, but we are now in August. You will update us as you do on YouTube with the key transits. And what I want to give people tonight is a sense of what's coming for the rest of the year. And we'll focus, if we can, maybe on 3 or 4 main key transits that you feel are very pivotal. And if we could culminate in the one that we talked about earlier, the December one, and that little chink of light that we're seeing there. I was told that previously in another interview. Could you take us through maybe 3 or 4, Pam, of the key ones for the rest of the year that you feel are most important?
Yes, I mean, this was really set up, if I can just give some context. This was set up at the beginning of the year. Astrologers knew 2020 was going to be a huge year of transition and transformation, because we had this conjunction between Saturn and Pluto that was exact on the 12th of January at 22 degrees of Capricorn. So we knew it was going to be huge, because if we look back in history, that was happening at the beginning of World War I. It was happening between 1933 and 1935. It was happening at 9/11. They tend to be hard times. Austerity, hard times, and times where there's a feeling of contraction or containment or limitation in some way, more rules and regulations coming in. So we knew that's what it was about. It's interesting, Mercury was also involved in that conjunction, which is about your mobility. You know, that has been very limited and restricted too. So, but we didn't really know exactly how it was going to manifest. And still, it was really starting from December, from some very big eclipses happening in December, and started to roll out. And I think one very interesting thing, which I'll come back to, as we got into March, 22nd of March, was when the lockdown began across many, many countries. And that was exactly the day that Saturn, planet of rules, regulations, constriction, limitation, went into the sign of Aquarius, which is freedom. So boom, and it stayed there until July the 2nd, which is when the lockdown in many countries was being released and relaxed. So that was very interesting. If that was going to give us a glimpse down the line, as it were, because Saturn is moving fully into Aquarius in December, that was one of the manifestations. So then we get to now, really, on the 28th of June, Mars moved into its own warrior sign of Aries on the 28th of June. Now, normally it moves through a sign in 6 to 8 weeks. It's pretty quick. It's going to stay in its own warrior sign until January, which is extraordinary, 6 months. And over that period of time, it is going to repeatedly, because it goes retrograde. Retrograde is just an optical illusion. If two trains are pulling out of a railway station and you're on the slower one, you have the illusion, actually make it easier, say you're on the faster one, you have the illusion that the one alongside you is going backwards. And of course it isn't, it's also going forwards, but because you're moving faster, that's the optical illusion. That's what retrogradation is. So planets never go backwards, it's an optical illusion from Earth. But when they do that, they are closer to the Earth. Now, Mars will be retrograde between the 9th of September and the 13th of November, soon after the American election. So it's going to be closer to the Earth, and its symbolism will be felt more strongly. Now, Mars was retrograde for a period of time in the summer, well, Northern Hemisphere summer of 2018. You may remember that was one of the hottest summers on record. We had many sort of heat-related deaths at that time, but then it was in Capricorn and Aquarius. Now it's going to be in Aries, so it's going to be stronger, and it will repeatedly square those Capricorn planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, and come to conjunct a dwarf planet called Eris, goddess of discord and chaos, but also the female awakener. So Mars in Aries is generally about individual power. I want to be free. I want to be independent. I know my own mind. I know who I am. And the individual sense of power, energizing Eris, who's been kicking off in Hong Kong and America and heaven knows Berlin recently, that is going to be energized, but because people are awakening. And the squares to the Capricorn planets, Capricorn, particularly Pluto and Saturn there, is about governmental authority, institutionalized authority, rules and regulations, verticality. We are telling you what to do. So these are the rules and regulations in society around containment and contraction, and you have to obey them. And people increasingly are going to say, do you know what? I'm not sure I am. Because there's going to be such awakening. I think there's going to be mass awakening through these next few months. So that's the very positive side of it. This feeling of people waking up almost from a sleep of thousands of years is how it feels. And it's incredibly exciting from that point of view. So what I've been saying in videos recently, rather than to sort of get your sword out necessarily, because there are going to be people on the streets. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We're seeing it everywhere.
Yes.
But for ourselves, if we really want to use this energy to evolve, turn Mars in Aries energy into courage, into inner power, into a sense of center, into your hero energy. What can you be a hero for? What are you going to stand for as a warrior to be a principal at this time in this life? And whether it's, you know, like me trying to put messages out on social media to help people see it from a different point of view, whatever you're doing in your particular modality, find a way to encourage that awakening, because for sure it's potentially spitty and combative and impulsive and right, wrong, good, bad, black, white, you know, all of that stuff. That polarity and duality doesn't help us to get to unity consciousness. And the best of Aquarius is about unity consciousness. And I've used in my videos the analogy of an ant colony or a beehive, or more recently, an idea of a superorganism where all the cells have a different function, but the overriding principle is the health of the whole and the evolution of the health of the whole. So we've got to get into that mindset of, you know, particularly, I mean, the South Node is in Sagittarius, dropping the judgments, dropping the polarity, dropping all of that, avoiding the spatting, because it produces negative energy, and to raise ourselves to a higher level of being. And this is what yoga teaches you, being the observer, being the witness, you know, watching it play out, but being able to have a higher perspective to say, no, my greater goal is unity consciousness, because it will benefit everyone on earth more quickly if I follow that path.
Beautiful. Thank you, Pam. And the key one in December that's quite big, I think you said it's a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and it's December the 20th. How significant is that one?
20. It's very significant. I mean, it happens right on that on that, you know, winter solstice equinox period. So it's energized because of that. But the conjunctions between Saturn and Jupiter happen every 20 years. But they tend to happen every for a period of 200 years in the same element. So for instance, the last 200 years, they've always, every 20 years, they've happened in earth signs. I think there was one, it was 1981, 1982, it happened in Libra, but apart from that, every single time it happened in earth. So we've had a 200-year history of density, if you like, earth, materialism, permanence, you know, home for life, job for life, long-term thinking, that ownership, that kind of thing. So on December the 20th, at 0 of Aquarius, and that's important too because 0 of the sign really emphasizes it, this conjunction is about a new worldview, particularly when it changes element into air, because Aquarius is air. So not only is it going to begin a new 20-year cycle, it's going to begin a new 200-year cycle in air signs. So what is air? Air is information, particularly Aquarius, digitization, everything being electrified, everything being digitized, probably cashless, everything being sort of via the internet or smart devices or many other things as well. So there's going to be a much greater sense of digital connection between us, but it's also about quantum leaps, because Aquarius energy ruled by Uranus as well, both of them are not linear or gradual. They have a feeling of the quantum, jumps in our understanding, jumps in our evolution. And I really think that's what is coming, both in new inventions that could actually really benefit us. For instance, I think Uranus is in Taurus. Uranus rules Aquarius. Uranus is in Taurus. One of the wonderful aspects about Taurus is being able to achieve a state of stillness, just dropping into that state of stillness in nature, tuning into the rhythms of the earth. It's very, very simple. I think some new devices, and they already have been developed, but more to come, that will quickly enable all of us to achieve that state of stillness. So some of the innovations will be able to elevate our consciousness by helping us a little bit, by plugging us into a device which can help us to see things from a higher point of view. Am I making sense, Paul?
Interesting. Yeah.
Such a lot here.
You're talking a little bit about AI. Are you in that way?
Yeah, I'm talking about AI, potentially. I'm talking about a lot of digital technologies, but I'm also talking about technologies which can be life enhancing, okay, which don't have to challenge biology, but can enhance biology. And I think that's going to happen a lot, actually. And it always depends on our collective level of consciousness, how that is going to manifest. I mean, that's why I endlessly bang on about this, because astrology gives you the pattern. It doesn't give you the level. The level at which everything astrological manifests is our level of consciousness individually and collectively. So it's down to us how magnificently that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius is going to manifest. But for sure, I get a feeling of a big fork in the road. I mean, I've had a sense of a fork in the road for the last couple of years, but inevitably the fork gets wider, and you just inevitably, you just haven't got enough leg length to jump. And I think they're very connected to 3D reality and 5D. And in every waking moment, we are choosing currently our fork in the road, because our present is actually our future. Everything we think in our present day is actually our future. So how we feel right now is creating our future. So one thing, stop me if I'm just bang on, but one thing I often suggest to my clients is to stick post-it notes all over the house, fridge, bathroom mirror, kitchen cupboards, to say, what are you thinking about? What's your frequency? Are you into negative self-talk? You're banging on about, you're a loser, you'll never do this right. Or catch yourself so you get into a habit of being more conscious, of being more loving, of being more kind. And one thing I might do in my next video talk about this, but one thing I'm really big on at the moment is, because of any potential constrictions in freedom, is being aware of choice. Being aware, I choose to get up now. I choose to have a cup of tea. I choose to brush my teeth. I choose to have my breakfast. And if you are aware of it as the freedom to choose, then you are much more likely to feel grateful for it. And what we want to start to broadcast to the field is choice, freedom, and gratitude. Because if we do that, instead of feeling I'm in lockdown and I'm incredibly miserable, we are projecting a better future. So choice, freedom, and gratitude. And we can all, making a cup of tea, making a cup of coffee, brushing your hair, writing something, listening to something. I'm choosing to do this. I have the freedom to do that, and I'm very grateful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, milking it as much as you can, absolutely. And that leads us nicely into the next one, which is a subject you're very keen on talking about, I know yourself, is how to raise your own frequency within the quantum model. Can you talk to us a bit about that? Maybe give people a few tips who are listening on how they can really up their frequency. It's an interesting quote comes to mind. Buckminster Fuller, he's had a great quote, and you probably know that one. You cannot, and even the way you described us all as a whole, like seeing the consciousness as one body, like if it starts arguing with itself, which is what some of us are doing right now, and some of the stuff that we're seeing is very frustrating. But to be able to really keep your frequency high, we'd love to hear some of your tips, Pam.
Yeah, it's interesting. On Facebook today, there was a fabulous image I posted, as I said, on my just Pam Gregory Facebook page. I think it was from Nassim Harriman. And it was a diagram of a person with their torus field who was in fear. And the electromagnetic field of their heart was minute. And then they went into love, and it was like it was 100 times bigger. It was just gigantic. And I was talking about this in my last video just a few days ago, but one of the things I do that is so incredibly simple, everybody can do it for free, anytime, at home, is just to, and I do this several times a day myself, just close your eyes, drop into your heart, Imagine that you're breathing in and out of your heart as if it was your lung. And don't force, don't push, just completely relax into that naturally. And within seconds, actually, you slow and deepen your breathing, and then have a feeling of compassion, love, gratitude, or appreciation for anyone and anything in your life. Your pet cat, anything, you know, blue sky, anything, a flower, anything. And that positive frequency, together with breathing through your heart, massively expands your electromagnetic field. I mean, I used to do some terribly simple healing work, and all you did really was that you dropped into your heart with your breath, closed your eyes, had this very positive feeling, and then automatically your patient or your client would entrain with your higher frequency. They had no choice. It's a law of physics known as downward causation. So the higher frequency will always affect the lower rather than the lower affecting the higher. And they healed themselves. I wasn't doing anything other than breathing. So that is, you know, one of the really simple, everybody can do that. And it's interesting, since I've mentioned it, people have written to me and said, gosh, it's made such a difference in my life. People have healed serious illnesses just doing that. So that's a way to raise your frequency in seconds. And it changes all your biomarkers, it heals you. Because if you're in negative mode, that goes to every cell in your body. If you're in that wonderful heart breath work mode, it not only goes to your brain, it goes to every single cell in your body, that frequency. So you're promoting wonderful health for yourself as well as for the rest of the world.
And I'd like to ask you as well about this dance that we're seeing, or this battle we're seeing between dark and light, and how we can maybe rise above that duality and not see the dark as kind of the enemy in a sense. You know, on a practical level, some people would prefer not to wear a mask. They're fully confident in their own health, that they have a good, strong immune system. But yet we're all, as we say, we have to kowtow to some of these legal laws that are happening. What do you feel is what advice do you give to people for the path of least resistance to operate within this confining reality sometimes?
Yeah, and I know there are many different views on masks, and again we're back into, you know, right, wrong, tit for tat, ping pong, and all I would say is, I mean, the way I deal with, you know, luckily I haven't been to a supermarket in 5 months. I'm kind of holed up here with organic vegetable boxes, and I'm managing perfectly well. But the very odd time I've had to go to an organic farm shop or whatever for 4 minutes, I just think this is just not a big deal. I'm gonna, you know, it may help other people that I'm wearing this. This is not a big deal. And I have it on for 3 or 4 minutes, and that's all I need it for, and that's fine. So I think the attitude you have to, whatever you think about the virus, whatever you think about the mask, it's the attitude you have. Because if you're wearing it in resistance, again, we're back to negativity. So just think, do you know what? It's not a big deal. I'll wear it for however long I have to without creating mayhem in the shop. And that will be fine. So that would be my advice. And to answer the first part of your question, I don't think dark will ever be completely eradicated. Maybe we shouldn't expect that, but it's about the balance. It's about getting a better balance of light and dark. And if we can get that in ourselves, if enough of us, and enough of us as humanity can get that in ourselves, then we're onto a roll. And remember, the speed at which we're pulling this better world towards us is down to our efforts. That's our barometer for how well we're doing. So things seem a little bit slow to arrive in this better world. We just got to up our game.
Sure. Thank you. That's a great answer, Pam. I want to get on to a bit about your relationship with Bracha. You're both friends, and I've loved some of the interviews. And, you know, getting a chance there to talk to some higher intelligence like the Pleiadians that you have done. What have you learned from them, and what sticks with you when you chat to them? I love the tone as well that she does. Sometimes she does a bit of toning. So this is what you said earlier. Yeah, the frequency and the music that you hear in the charts. So what's really impacted upon you in terms of your relationship with Bracha and the Pleiadians?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned to you on the phone, I've only actually met Bracken once, and that was in France, when we had the most hilarious weeks, because she lives in Athens and I live in southern England, but we just kind of hit it off as astro buddies, and I always seem to sort of dissolve into giggles with her. But yes, the Palladians, she was starting to channel the Palladians at that time a few years ago, and they really, to me, they represent a higher intelligence, because their answers will always elevate us. Their answers will always pull us up to a different reality. And they will give us a kind of higher level picture of what we need to be focused on. And several people I know channel extraterrestrial beings, benevolent extraterrestrial beings of various kinds. And I always get this feeling of incredible loving wisdom, incredible depth of love and wisdom, that they're here to help us, and they tolerate, almost like a 3-year-old child, they tolerate our struggles and our difficulties with enormous love. And so they are fascinating to talk to, because whatever I had planned as questions, I've just got to surf the way, depending on the answers they give me. And it's absolutely fascinating. I'd like to ask them much more, actually. We might plan another one to delve deeper into the the galaxies and get some information on that. But they're kind of ahead of us. They could represent our future selves, what we are going to grow into in terms of intelligence and wisdom. Equally, they could represent our past selves. We might have been galactics in the past. I know I certainly have. So it's a beautiful reminder of something higher. I think in the current situation, we get so caught up in the conflict and the density, we just lose the bigger picture. So that, for me, is one of the great benefits, that they shine a light on higher level wisdom. I think that's what I'd say.
Brilliant, brilliant. And they've had some great chats with you about technology, and what I get a great sense of, and it's as we say, everything really is vibration. So it's a sense of playing in this reality rather than taking it so seriously. You know, the energy you had as a child where you would play, that is coming across to me from a lot of spiritual teachers lately. They're saying, begin to play, begin to engage more, begin to activate that part of you that just sees this as a little bit of a game. It's a fascinating, it changes the vibe totally when you play, you know? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a lighter energy. And yeah, I think when you're in play mode, you're much more open, you know, you're open-hearted, etc. And I think you asked me some minutes ago, Paul, just about the quantum model. I don't think I got around to answering that bit, but this is really part of it, because, you know, as you say, and I repeatedly say, everything is frequency, everything is vibrating energy. We have got something like 0.0000, I think there's 6 zeros and then a 1% solid matter in us. We're actually holograms, as it were. And indeed, I believe the whole galaxy and super galaxies are actually holograms. The whole thing is much more malleable than we might imagine. And this came from Newton, really, that with astrology, people often say, well, you know, you don't really believe in astrology, do you? They said, I had that question several thousand times, which is why I had to call my first book that. But because people imagine they're spinning rocks, you know, zillions of miles out in space, and then an empty gap, and then us. And they say, well, how can that possibly affect us? And I mean, that's what Newton was proposing, really, you know, these laws of motion, that there's no mechanical push or pull. They're way too far apart from the moon, which has a gravitational force, especially at supermoons. They can't possibly have any effect, any physical effect. And he was right, they don't. But if you look at it in a quantum way, that we are one living, breathing organism of vibrating energy, then you start to see this in a very different way. And this was really the main theme of my first book. And because I think each of the planets represents an archetype. You know, with Mars, it's warrior, it's anger, it's hero, it's courage. With Uranus, it's the maverick, it's the eccentric, it's the one who challenges those are the basic archetypes. And I could talk long term about each of them, but they're each like a multifaceted diamond. And what I believe they represent are kind of concepts of psychological or psychic patterning in our consciousness. They're a part of our consciousness. And they come together in our birth charts in a particular geometry with a particular music, we were talking about earlier. And there's something vibrational or energetic or quantum that is linking those planets to our consciousness. It's not mechanical, it's not gravitational, apart from the moon. It's way, I mean, the ancient Greeks knew all about this. Plato talked about this. In the Vedas, they talk about this thousands of years ago. David Bohm, he was a theoretical physicist at London University, great mate of Krishnamurti and Einstein. He was fascinated by how reality was formed. He talked way into the night with Krishnamurti. You can still see those old videos on YouTube, I think. And so that's something that fascinates me. How is reality formed? And I just keep coming back again and again and again. It's like every answer is love. Every answer is frequency. Because I just think the whole thing, the super galaxies, I just think it's one gigantic, living, breathing organism and hologram that is more malleable to change than we could possibly imagine. We've just forgotten how.
I interviewed a guy before, Tom Campbell, and he said it's a virtual reality, and he has evidence to prove that. He astral traveled. He's from the Monroe Institute, and he says it's a virtual reality. And there is the energies of competition, of fear, you just don't work. He said, if you're playing a computer game, this is a computer game, and those energies don't work. You want to win the game, it's love, it's service. That's the energy you use to engage with this particular game. And it was a really brilliant way of looking at it. I think we probably are in a kind of as you described it beautifully as well. It's malleable. It's malleable. And astrology in that context would be also malleable, yeah? Or a kind of a map.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally, because the pattern is set at birth, but your frequency isn't. We're here to elevate our consciousness to the level at which your chart manifests is totally down to your level of consciousness. I mean, I've been told I've got a very similar chart to Deepak Chopra. He's doing rather better than me, but at least we're roughly heading in the same direction. Do you get what I mean? So it all depends on your level of consciousness. I often use the analogy of a sheet of music. It's how we play the sheet of music. We can play it with a couple of tin spoons of the London Philharmonic. We can have a little life or we can have a big life. And that latitude is our free will. That latitude is our consciousness. And I really agree about, our reality being virtual. It's like we're creating our own film to live in. And that becomes quite exciting, because you feel much more empowered by that as well. So I think that's a really beautiful way to look at it. And I think, I see the planets with their archetypal meaning and us here on Earth, almost that energy of space isn't just empty, it's packed. It's packed with a language of meaning. And astrology is that language of meaning to decode who you are meant to become in this lifetime. So your birth chart is like those cross wires that I talk about, those angles in the chart are like the interpenetration of that language of meaning coming from the planets with your level of consciousness day to day as you bumble along. And that's the interaction, the interpenetration. And that's how I see it, all in one vibrating hologram.
We're going to go over to people now for a few questions in a moment. We already have one there logged in, so that's great. But before we go, I want to really get a sense, and as we finish chatting here, myself and yourself, what's your forecast for 2021? Are you very optimistic about where we're going? Do you see some good signs coming up astrologically? Let's raise people's frequencies right now if we can.
Absolutely. I think, it's all down to this fork in the road. I think it could be an amazing time of awakening. People awake more and more every day through a lot of disclosure about corruption, disclosure about secrets that have been hidden, disclosure about benevolent ETs that have been helping us. So disclosure of many, many subjects. That that is going to wake people up. That is going to happen very intensely. The next 6 months are going to be, you know, hang on to your hat. It's going to be, but where do you put your focus? Do you put your focus on the 3D level, or do you say, no, I'm going to put my focus on my freedom of choice, and I'm going to, you know, make my reality very different to that. So as we head into 2021, there will be in one level some constraints on the 3D level. I mean, we've got Saturn in Aquarius squaring Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, in Taurus, really quite tightly for the first 7 months, pretty much for the year, but particularly the first 7 months. So we know what happened last time Saturn went into Aquarius. There was a restriction on freedom. Because it's squaring Uranus, that can be around more internet censorship, or more internet control, more rules and regulations around the internet, that kind of thing. So for us on this surging path line of awakening, we have to create that inner feeling of freedom every step of the way through our days. And then I think amazing things are going to be coming in for us, because Aquarius, we are going to understand what I was just really going on about with frequency and vibration. Because if you look at the glyph for Aquarius, it's to do with, it's that jagged double line of energy. It's going to be much greater understanding of energy and frequency and how that creates our reality. In addition to that, cosmologically, we are getting more light into our bodies. The magnetic shield of the Earth has fallen away. Never known this in our lifetime. Huge amounts of cosmic and galactic energy coming in, upgrading us. The Earth is passing through the photon belt. Photons carry information to upgrade us. We are already gravitationally organized beings of light. We're becoming lighter. If we're on that path of awakening, we are becoming lighter every step of the way. And the physics of the Earth is helping us. The physics of cosmology and the Earth is helping us. So that kind of acceleration we've never known in our lifetime. So that can take us to a much higher level of being that's kind of unimaginable in how magnificent it could be. Could just be filled with a beautiful new Earth of abundance, no war, no poverty, no hunger. And I did a video a couple of months ago on new planetary archetypes that are being discovered. Well, they were discovered around about the 2000s, but it takes astrologers a while to plug the myths that go with them. And they are all quantum in nature, and they all have this kind of instinctive, almost shamanic relationship with nature. So if we can get that back, we are going to make leaps and bounds in our understanding of reality and where we're headed. It's very exciting if we're on that trajectory, but make sure you're on that path.
You've really raised the vibrations there now, Pam.
Okay, good.
Thank you for that. That was brilliant. Yeah, so we can begin actually straight away with questions, because they're kind of building up here. So this is great. We'll move into our second half here with a bit of a Q&A. So from Ramon Horka, how long are we going to be traveling through the photon belt? Is the whole galaxy moving through it too? What would you recommend that he researches more information about this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't know the answer to that. I know it's quite an extended period, and it's the entire galaxy. This upgrade that we have is not just for the Earth, it is for the entire galaxy. And that is why benevolent ETs are helping us, because it involves them as well. It's an upgrade for the entire galaxy. So this is a very beneficial period, and I think it's quite a long period of time we're moving through it. 3 sources I'd go to for that. RoryDuff.com, who I often talk about. He's very big on energy lines on the Earth and some of the cosmology. Also, spaceweather.com may have something on this, but suspiciousobservers.com on YouTube will probably have quite a lot about that.
Okay, brilliant. That was great. Thank you, Ramon, for that question. We have a lady called Natalie White, who's expressing amazing compliments towards you, Pam, for your energy and passion. It's infectious, and she would like to learn more. She would like to know where to learn more about birth charts and possibly study astrology. What would you recommend? Who would you recommend she work with to get her full chart done? and she appreciates you're very popular and in demand, so she's not asking you. So where would you recommend she go to learn more?
Yeah, what I'd recommend, I mean, you've got to go to the people who draw you, really. I mean, it depends whether she wants to do her study in person or online. Online is probably much easier if we're going to go into any other lockdowns. I mean, an organisation that's very good online is the Astrology University, run by Tony Howard. And he takes people, he has guest speakers all the time. He very kindly invited me, but I haven't got any time. But people come in all the time on various subjects. And he's recently, I believe, launched a 4-year certification course. London School of Astrology is excellent, run by Frank Clifford. I believe he's recently developed an online course as well. So if you check those out, and also if you just follow certain astrologers on YouTube, some of them have their own teaching modules. I mean, I've got some basic teaching modules on my website under the products page, but if you want something more structured that gives you certification at the end, I'd recommend those 2 teaching organizations.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, Natalie. Our next question here, which the lady has rephrased, but I love your original way you asked it, Tracy. She says, hang on, sorry, lost it there for a moment. So she said, can you ask Pam if the feeling of getting lighter feels like crap in the process?
Yes, it absolutely does, because with all this new light coming in, we are shedding so much density. The very fact that planets are going to be gradually moving out of Capricorn, astrologically will shed density. And therefore we're purging. We're purging society, we're purging political systems, we're purging our bodies. So that can feel pretty rough when we're, if we go on a detox, that can feel pretty rough for our bodies, because also with the energy, the light energy on the Earth being so different, our own individual electromagnetic auras are having to adjust to that all the time, and we've never known it before. So the body is kind of full on with those adjustments, and for some people they're feeling exhausted with that. So just rest. Sleep in the day, do a Mediterranean siesta. It's fine, because our bodies are having to adapt to these very new circumstances, which are incredibly positive as we shed the dross and move to the light.
Very encouraging answer. Thank you for that question. Una O'Byrne is asking, in relation to the fork in the road that you mentioned, she's heard other speakers say that if not enough of us waken up or raise our vibrations, that we won't reach the threshold the universe needs, and it won't happen. Has Pam seen anything along those lines?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I think it's definitely going to happen. Absolutely, definitely. I think there's no doubt about that. We're on a trajectory now. It may affect the speed at which it happens, because the more people that join the high road, as it were, will accelerate the whole process. It won't affect the awakening. It won't affect stepping into a very different world, a new Earth, if you like. But it may, to some extent, affect the speed, because I think we have to have sufficient momentum, as it were, to move to that quickly.
Okay, thank you for that question. And now we have one from Caroline. Does Pam think the Saturn in Aquarius period until 2023 will coincide with COVID-19's presence?
Not entirely. I think it's a very tricky thing about COVID. I mean, it's very intense this year, partly because the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction as well that we've got all year to do with global pandemics. I think it will get not easier this year particularly, but it may get easier next year. And what I can see are almost waves of release lockdown, that kind of thing. But ultimately, I think we're going to develop a kind of herd immunity. I mean, every single one of us has hundreds of thousands of viruses in our guts. That's how we evolve as a species, because we're running into other people's bacteria and viruses all the time, and our body is so intelligent, it develops immunity to that. We may get a bit poorly for a few days, but then we bounce back, and that becomes a herd reaction. And so even if it's just through that herd immunity, I'm not going into those nice injections and talking about that, believe me. Yeah, but okay. I think it will get easier as we move through next year.
Okay, Okay, that's good news. And oh, Tracy was expressing her thanks there. Okay, any more questions from anybody? Just while I'm waiting on the next question, Pam, I'm going to ask you, obviously you don't do predictive astrology, but I'm going to ask you for a prediction. Trump or Biden, how significant do you think this is? And what's your take on the US election this year?
Do you know, I knew this was going to come up. And what I'm actually doing is a very detailed analysis, which I won't put out on video because I'll get too much hate mail. I'll put it in my monthly newsletter. My monthly newsletter is about 7,000 words every time, costs £15 a year or about $18, so it's incredibly good value. But I can go into much more detail, particularly on sensitive subjects. So I haven't looked at all of the detail, but what I do know is it isn't clear cut. And that applies in several ways. I mean, when Trump got in, I knew he was going to win because he had solar arc sun on his ascendant. And that trumps everything, if you excuse the pun. Mm-hmm. So although it was unexpected, he was going to win. Both candidates have good and bad in their charts. And both are going to have health challenges. I mean, these are two men in their late 70s. Both are going to have health challenges in different ways, and I can detail that in the analysis. But almost the much bigger question is, what's going to happen about the election? Because on the day of the election, we have Mercury stationary. That's not perfect. This happened in the year 2000 when there was a big kerfuffle over Bush and Gore and who had won, and there was a recount, etc. Astrology is way bigger. The other aspects are way bigger than that, than in 2000 this year. So much to say here. The US is moving towards its Pluto return. Pluto coming back to its natal 1776 place exactly in 2022, but we're in the run up to this. So all of the values of America are being challenged. There's a great deal of social unrest in America. It's a very polarized society, politically, demographically, it's extremely polarized. So almost whoever wins, I think there's going to be a problem, if you like. I think there's going to be quite a lot of people on the streets. Now, I definitely think that the result will not be clear. I definitely think that. How long, this is terrible, how long it won't be clear for, I'm not quite sure. I think it's possible it could be contested. There's even a question mark about, will it happen? Because we're already hearing about voter fraud, and because of the virus, everybody having to send in postal votes, and how clean a system is that? Because if it's not reliable, how can we trust the whole election process? So there's a lot of kerfuffle around those things. But I also have the feeling, and this isn't astrological, it's kind of intuitive, so, but I might get a better sense when I do the detailed astrology, is I think something's almost going to happen at the last moment to one of the candidates, and I don't want to say which one. Almost at the last moment something's going to happen, and that may increase the lack of validity of the election, if I'm making sense.
Okay.
So I think what I can clearly say is there'll be a lot of confusion. I can clearly say it will not be clear. Okay. And it may not be clear for some time, and as I said, I don't even know if the election will actually happen because of other factors in the US, and if it does happen, the result will be delayed and possibly even contested. But I will have a much better analysis when I do the newsletter. Sure.
And America really is kind of playing out for the world at the moment, isn't it? It's like is it very pivotal in the evolution of the planet, do you feel, what's happening in America?
Huge, absolutely huge. And it's partly because of this Pluto return that only ever happens every 248 years. And remember, America was birthed at that Declaration of Independence, 4th of July, 1776. That was its birth, and its birth was in revolution, if you like. And we're getting a lot of those same repeating aspects coming back, as it were. Who is America? Pluto's in the second house of values for them. What values do they want the country to stand for now? It's in that second house is to do with the economy. Clearly, because of the virus, the global economy is going to be very challenged. The US dollar's been dropping a lot recently. So I think there's going to be a lot of, let's put it politely, debate over who the country is and how they want to move forwards. And that very strong Mars in Aries, that's going to be retrograde 9th of September to the 13th of November over the election period, remember, so therefore closer to the Earth, is squaring the Sun of the US chart. The Sun is the leadership of the country. So we've got some very powerful, the American chart is being very heavily aspected at the moment. And yeah, it's like the crucible almost, but equally it can become the phoenix. It can become the phoenix if collectively people come together and say, these are the values we stand for, and this is the country we now want to birth, because Pluto is about transformation and rebirth. Entirely possible. And they can be the phoenix rising from the ashes. That's very much the symbolism of Pluto as well. So this whole phase, I know it's lumpy on the 3D level, and we don't have to keep looking at 3D level, but it is our test of mastery. Because life is easy when the going is easy. You know, everybody's fairly well off, nobody's in hunger or poverty. There's no test of mastery, really. So many of us have been doing our spiritual practice in a fairly abstract way, you know, no big deal. Now it's the rubber hitting the road. So we absolutely have to stick to that spiritual discipline, because this is how we learn our mastery. You know, all the great spiritual teachers said, whatever is happening on the outside, you have to keep your equanimity and treat everything the same. And that observer-witness perch is very useful in that.
Yeah, it's really, there was a moment earlier on where you said we keep coming back to the same answer. You know, in your own spiritual development, I always hear the same answer, back into your heart, back into your own focus, your own frequency. I just want to talk about the Earth's frequency at the moment, because it's been reported about the Schumann resonance going completely off the charts lately. Is that true? Have you observed that? And where is
I mean, that's certainly what's being reported. I mean, there's some controversy because some big organizations are saying, yeah, you know, it's historically been at 7.83 hertz, the level of your alpha waves of well-being. It is always at 7.83 hertz, and it will always stay that. But many people are saying, look, it's absolutely off the scale here. You know, it's peaking at 81, 99, it's crazy. I do think that the two are in tandem. If it is true historically that our alpha pitch as human beings, our sense of well-being, is at 7.83 hertz, so we're matching the Earth's heartbeat. Whether it is the change in the Earth energy that is partly contributing to our rise in consciousness, or whether our rise in consciousness is changing the Schumann resonance, I don't think it much matters. It's a feedback loop. It's a feedback loop. And I think the Schumann resonance is very much reflecting our elevations in consciousness, because we've always got to match that. We can't be separate from it, because it is the Earth's heartbeat that we're in tune with. You probably know, way back in the 50s, there was a professor called Professor Weaver, wrote about this in my first book, and he took a group of volunteers, and he put them, they volunteered to do this, I mean, presumably they were paid, but he put them in a sealed lead bunker. So they were separate, completely separate from the Schumann resonance. They had no sense of it. Very quickly, within days, they became mentally and physically very unwell. So what he did, without telling any of them, he found a way to put the Schumann resonance into the bunker. None of them knew, and they all came back to health. Big study you can read about, Professor Weaver. It's in my
look that up. Yeah.
So our connection with the Earth, particularly bare feet on the grass, talk about this endlessly as well, sucking up the healing ions of the Earth, is incredibly important, not just for our physical well-being, but for our mental well-being as well. We've got to be connected to the Earth. Everything is interconnected. We are part of Gaia, that living, breathing organism. It's not just something we exploit.
Feel free, audience, if you have any more questions. Before I read another question, I just wanted to ask Pam, the significance of the moon. Remember once going to an Ayurvedic healer, and he prescribed that I should look at the moon for the next 2 weeks. It's a type of prescription I like, but I'm just wondering, what's your take on the moon? What's your feeling about the moon?
Well, I love the moon. I mean, I the, but some people are much more sensitive to the moon than others. I mean, classically, myself included, actually, the few days up, about 3 days, 4 days running into the full moon, and this is statistically true, a lot of people find it harder to sleep because the energies are stronger. The moon is coming to the peak of its cycle. So I have a lot of trouble sleeping then. And it just shows how interconnected we are. You know, I, in this little place in the south of England, can't sleep because the moon is becoming full. I mean, that really shows our connection. But for many people, particularly if they have their sun in Cancer or Cancer ascendant, they are, because it's ruled by the moon, they are super tuned into the moon, very tuned in. And their moods sort of go along with the moon's moods, as it were. And if you are that kind of person, just go with the flow. I mean, that's, it rules the tides. That's what Cancer is all about. So yeah, just go with the flow and benefit from the upswings and know what to do, cozy with cocoa on the downswings. But yes, recognize it's part of your sensitivity and your intuition.
Sure. Mara has a question. Can we adjust to 5G energy, would you say? What's your thoughts on 5G?
Yeah, I don't want to get into this in too much detail because I think things are being helped.
Okay.
I think things are being helped. I'd like to say that. Frequency is the answer. If you raise your frequency, you go beyond that. Frequency is the answer. I mean, it's the answer to everything because you'll rise above it.
It's funny that we have 5D and 5G coinciding right now, isn't it? I think 5D might be the answer, right? Go into 5D.
5D is the antidote, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, so we're coming. We've about 10 minutes to go. Before we go, I have just a couple more things. Is there anything, Pam, particularly you would like to get across at this time as well, that you wanted to talk about? Are you working on a new book, or have you completed two? What's going on for you in that sense? I know that if people want to hear more about you, it's best to watch your videos and subscribe to the monthly forecast, which sounds great value at 15. As you said, I think everyone should sign up for that one. But what are you currently working on? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I feel as if I've been in a wind tunnel for as many years as I can remember. Just so much comes at me every day. So I am constantly working 7 days a week to try and help as many people as I can. I am because of what's coming up in my own chart next year. I'm really trying to take more time out for my own personal development, so I don't kind of sink with the volume, because there's only we all have to help ourselves. So I want to create more personal development time because it's such an incredibly important time on the earth. And I feel that will feed back to a higher level of communication in some way. I don't really want to commit to writing a third book yet because it's epic to write a book. I can't tell you, it's an epic task. So we will see what comes of that. But I think in allowing myself a bit more downtime, higher level of material will come in which can help everybody move ahead better as well. So I've got to get out of this kind of wind tunnel existence, I think, and alter the balance. So that's where I'm headed. So yeah, I'm fully booked for the year. I can't take on any more clients. I'm really sorry. I'm turning away dozens every week. I just don't have any more capacity unless I learn not to sleep. I don't have a waiting list. It would be way too long and very depressing. I don't know if I'm taking any client bookings at all next year. I just really want to feel my way through and get the lay of the land. But my personal development is often a bit shorthanded when you're in service, as it were. So,
sure.
Yeah, so that's my basic trajectory.
So we have a question here from Una. Does Pam have any views on Brexit and how that fits in with what she sees astrologically?
Wow. Wow. Well, I think what is interesting is at this big Saturn-Pluto conjunction, 12th of January this year, Ceres, goddess of harvests and agriculture, was part of that very tight conjunction. And some astrologers, myself included, anticipated that would create some dislocation in food supplies, okay? So there are many reasons for that. Locusts, across various parts of the world. I think Brexit could create some dislocations in food supply, actually, because just for all kinds of reasons. So that is a possibility, and that could be quite short term, but I'd encourage people as far as possible to be self-sufficient, grow their own food, etc. I think, and this may seem a wild thing to say, I think it's even a possibility that we could rejoin in a few years' time. I think that's even a possibility. But we will see what unfolds, because I think an awful lot is going to happen politically in every single country, because this whole Pluto moving through Capricorn is the deconstruction of the old order. Pluto always deconstructs or digs into the shadow side of every sign it moves through. Capricorn is government, political systems, the structure of society. Now, Pluto will continue to move through Capricorn till 2024, then move into Aquarius. So the deconstruction of the way politics works, voting works, leadership, top down, verticality, unequal, all of that works is going to be demolished over the next few years. That, I think, will change everything. And if we can move to a unity consciousness, we will move away from this sense of national divisions. Because it was when Saturn moved into Capricorn, borders, boundaries, wars, territories, Trump's wall, Brexit, everybody dividing themselves off. Saturn moves out of there in December 2020, and even Pluto moves out of there in 2024. So I think the walls may come down, but we may be in a completely different political and structural arena by then. And if we are aiming for unity consciousness, then it will be a much more equal society, not a top-down, vertical, elite, rich, very poor society. And
your time frame for that, Pam, is kind of, we'll really feel that being born in 2024, you feel?
Well, it's happening all the time. I mean, if you look at the, I never watch mainstream news, it's just too miserable. But we can see that happening, we can see that government isn't functioning properly, whichever country you look at. There's a much higher distrust in leadership because a lot of corruption is coming out in all kinds of various ways, corruption of the rich and powerful. So I think in various ways, there's a kind of corrosion, sort of undertow to the structures we've known in our lifetime. And that will continue, I believe, the whole time Pluto is in Capricorn until 2024 when it moves out. So we've got a few years to go, but we're in the middle of it. You can't bring in a new world unless there's a complete breakdown of the old. As I often say, you can't fit the new kitchen on top of your old one. You've got to smash out the old one to fit the new. So we have to have a breakdown of the old to allow the new to emerge. And that's the very uncomfortable 3D process we're in right now.
So we're down to our last two questions, Pam. So I'm going to give you two quick ones here. The first one, and it's a really good question because we're bombarded with information. Tracy asks, is conspiracy theory creating more confusion than clarity?
Well, it depends what you call conspiracy theory. I mean, Copernicus and his heliocentric theories used to be called conspiracy theory, didn't it? Mm-hmm. And Galileo was under house arrest and, all the rest followed. That was conspiracy theory at the time. And then, oops, we discovered that was actually truth. So I think, I'm quite sensitive to the term conspiracy theory because I get, I've had 45 years of people saying, astrology, it's a load of bunkum, dismiss. And I sort of feel my Mars in Aries in pleasure. So I think that is, the term is unhelpful. The term for me is unhelpful because maybe I'm sensitive to it with astrology. I think what we need to do is to ask our own higher guidance for what is truth. And we are going to be going through a head spinning time with the South Node in Sagittarius and also Neptune square the nodal axis. It is going to be a head spinning of what's true, what's not, old belief systems that you thought were the way the world worked and you thought that person was a leader and had integrity and just shot as we move through the next few years. So for me, I stick with my own higher guidance, my intuition. Every night I'll ask a question of my dreams to give me clarity on what I believe is truth. But essentially, I stay away from that fray. I stay away as far as I can from the arguments. All I do is work on my energy. That's my total focus. I work on my energy and I'm in service as an astrologer. Full stop. And I buy groceries. Full stop. So, you know, and if that becomes your focus, it's a much more inward focus. If your focus is constantly your energy, your frequency, your vibration, I couldn't care less what's happening out there, because I'm creating my own reality and helping other people in doing so, because that's what I'm broadcasting. That is my total focus. If I get into all the stuff out there, I can feel my energy start to get very scattered and much lower frequency. So, and also I just don't have the time. Yeah. So, but I'm sensitive around the term conspiracy theory, because often the greatest minds in human history were dismissed as cranks, when actually they were geniuses.
Yeah, the name itself is so derogatory. You know, when people say conspiracy theory, they're actually saying, I don't believe this. And we need to change that terminology. It's just another theory. What do you think? But your tip on going in here, finding out your own truth, that's the way forward. This final question from this lady, which is a really practical one. She's going through her Pluto transit. Any tips on navigating this period for her?
Yeah, it depends what it's transiting, because, you know, it can be transiting many things, but essentially this is the myth of Persephone, because if she reads the myth of Persephone, she'll know that, you know, it's about being taken down to Hades, taken down to hell, and it's all dark and scary, and then she transforms and she comes back up to the light, and she's stronger, wiser, deeper. So reading that myth will help the process, because it's a period of deep transformation that is ultimately about stepping into your power, stepping into our power. So often it is a period of stress or difficulty, that often people or circumstances that leave your life. Sometimes it's a literal death, but often, you know, circumstances passing away. But it is whatever you no longer need in your life to step into your power. Often old psychological patterns come up that are from childhood that no longer serve you. But it really, really is a deep dive, and surrender to that deep dive. Surrender to that deep dive, knowing that you're going to come back up to the light, and constantly, even on the way down, as it were, have that sense of, I know this is leading me to a greater sense of my own power. Best if it's expressed altruistically. Pluto transits always work best if you are being altruistic and helping others. You know, I'm not just here to make a living, I'm here to make a difference, is the thought. If you can take other people with you in whatever your focus is, that makes the Pluto transit work better as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Eileen, for that question. And on that note, we are right at 9 o'clock, just past 9 o'clock. So even though time is only in the present moment, Pam, it's been a real pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it. You really got stuck in there. Wow. We had a little sense of where we were going to go, and it was great. Thank you so much. You've answered a lot of questions for people there, I think. And you've given us a real sense of hope.
Fantastic. I just think it's such a valuable modality, astrology, because it's practical, but it's a spiritual framework as well. And it can help to navigate, you know, when it all seems to be too crazy and overwhelming, it can help us to navigate, find our path through all of this, and to aim high, to constantly aim for the highest goal of unity consciousness. That's the Aquarian energy. That's the ant colony, the beehive, the superorganism. If we can all aim for that, we'll be doing really well.
And this 20th of December, you feel, is the beginning of a 200-year period, which is probably the Aquarian age.
The Aquarian age, and particularly after 2024, when Pluto also moves into Aquarius, that is, for me, definitely the Aquarian age. So everything Aquarian. So it's a sense of humanity, it's a greater sense of equality, a greater sense of helping each other. But it loses this top-down inequality and elite, you know, we are telling you what to do because you're just a servant in this game. I think a lot of the inequality, at its best, a lot of the inequality in the world can disappear We can share community, people coming together in community, whether it's physically going off to live off grid or whatever, or just online, coming together with what you're doing, Paul. This is a community. It's an online community of like-minded people. So the more that we can have that sense of community, that we are not alone, we are all in this together, one mind, one heart, then we have great power, because we have power in numbers, and Aquarius is all of humanity. So just think what we can achieve with one mind and one heart if we're at a high frequency, what we can do for this world.
People are sending in their blessings and thanks, and one lady is sending us a blessing here from Kauai, which I think is in Hawaii. Isn't that amazing that we can have someone in Hawaii? And brilliant. So Pam, I'm just going to invite you. We're going to do a short meditation to close out. Thank you again, as I said. Thank you to everybody for being here tonight and your wonderful questions. It's been fantastic. We do these events intermittently at the moment, but definitely about 2 a month. Our next one coming up on September the 1st is with Cryon, channeled by Lee Carroll, and we'll be interviewing Lee about how Cryon came into his life. So for now, we thank Pam again, and we just drop in, close our eyes and drop into our heart center for a couple of minutes. I want to connect, if we can, online. So I just get a sense of all of us connecting through our heart centers. And take a couple of breaths into your heart center. And get a sense, if you will, of the astrology and the planets that are around us and the cosmos. Get a vision of a starry sky at night and feel that within your heart center right now. That energy of space, awareness, and starlight in your heart center right now. Feel that energy of the cosmos supporting you as you move through this reality. It's always with you, always supporting you, and connecting us all. And now feel that starlight really light up in your heart center. Spread through the cells in your body. Feel your own energy expand. And now just feel yourself very grounded. Feel the roots going into the ground, into the earth. See the roots going from your feet into the earth center. Feel yourself grounded into the planet. And allow that light in your heart to stay with you as you open your eyes. And thank you to everybody for gathering here tonight. Thank you to Pam Gregory. Pam, you're a legend. Keep up doing the amazing work you're doing. We really appreciate you here in Ireland and all around the world for what you're doing in raising the consciousness. And all you lovely people who gathered, thank you so much. Thank you, Pam.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, Paul. Wonderful. Great fun speaking with you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Great tips.